Hello, everyone. I'm Jack Fisher. Welcome to my world, and welcome to another Jack Quick Reacts. And bear with me, it is very early in the morning. I just finished watching the X-Men '97 season 1 finale, and I am still restless and buzzing. So yeah, this is going to be another quick reaction. None of this is scripted. This is just me talking into my mic, doing my best to stay coherent, which is going to be a lot harder than usual. So bear with me. And also, before I go any further, there's a good chance that I'm going to spoil a lot of things about the both these entire season of X-Men '97 as and including the finale. So if you haven't watched it yet, here's your warning. But that's the only warning you're getting, because there is a lot to talk about. Because my God, this this show, this season, the way it played out, the way it ended, I had high expectations, but this show definitely exceeded them in ways I did not think possible. So, yeah, this is as a lifelong X-Men fan, and as someone who's lived through quite a few strange X-Men eras, including some pretty dark times. This was, I can't tell you how cathartic and how just satisfying it was. This wasn't just like revisiting the X-Men during their heyday in the '90s. This show took like every the best elements of X-Men from multiple eras and found a way to condense them into just 10 episodes. Let's stop for a moment to appreciate that. This season was only 10 episodes. It felt way too short, but my God, they squeezed so much into it. Now, the arc of the season was something that would probably take multiple. I could talk for hours on it, but I feel like for this reaction for the finale, what I just watched, Tolerance is Extinction, I felt like it was a real culmination of where not only where the X-Men were going in the context of the show, but with what they are facing and what the X-Men themselves have always had to deal with. I mean, there were so many. They've always had to deal with unique threats. I mean, when the season began, the threats were more localized. You had the Executioner. Then you had familiar threats like Sinister, and who played a huge role. But I got to say, these last few episodes have cemented Bastion as one of the premier X-Men villains, or just overall threats that they've ever faced. I have a feeling, there's going to be a lot of Bastion toys. There's going to be some Bastion cosplayers at Comic-Con this year, but I feel like, he represented the worst of the worst. He's more like an evolution of what the X-Men have always had to fight. I always knew there was going to be some other villain. They were going to bring in someone else, but Bastion, I think, was the perfect choice for this show. His mantra of tolerance is extinction. His idea that him kind of being like the evolution of Sentinels, and considering like the Sentinels were the first enemies the X-Men even faced when the show began in 1992. It's poetic, it's fitting, and oh my God, it was just such a spectacle. But okay, I'm going to try to back up a little, because I know I didn't do a reaction to every episode, but I do kind of feel like this first season if this season had a single arc, it's that the X-Men are evolving, but so are the challenges they're facing. Because they've early in the season, they showed that, they could function without Charles Xavier. They could still be the X-Men without their mentor. First two episodes were very, they showed, the X-Men still functioned very well. You had, they were still going out, saving innocent mutants, like Roberto, aka Sunspot, was sort of the first one they faced, and they almost made it look easy. Then when the Sentinels came back, they were able to team up. They were able to take them down. They were able to beat Gyrick, and they were able to find Trask. Everything seemed to be working. Then first thing they find out, Jean Grey isn't the Jean Grey they thought they were. They found out that she got cloned, which, again, that's a plot right out of the comics. And that was a plot that played out over so many years. And the fact that they managed to play it out in a single episode was, well, there's a lot to unpack there. That definitely, and And then that also kind of unlocked sort of the more soap opera elements of X-Men of this show. Everyone has always, said the X-Men is both a superhero, is as much a superhero comic as it is a soap opera, between romantic subplots, love triangles. Even though I hate love triangles with a passion, this show definitely embraced that element of it. I feel like, of all the characters kind of went through their own journey. Jean Grey definitely went through one of the most dramatic. I mean, the Jean Grey who was kind of at the start of the season is very different from the one at the end. Not just because she was a clone, not just because Madeline Pryor entered the picture. I think this season definitely went a long way towards making Jean Grey a character someone who more than just the telepath who faints all the time. Yeah, that was kind of the running joke for the original series. She other than the Phoenix Saga, she fainted a lot, but she only fainted once. Count them, once this entire season, and that was After that, she kind of went on a really I think of an overdue journey, one where she kind of has to piece herself together, and at the same time, Madeline Pryor exists in this world, and she has to reckon with that. And caught in the middle of all of it is Cyclops, who I got to say, the first two episodes made a lot of Cyclops fans, but I think the episodes that followed that gave Cyclops an arc that was similar to the comics, but one that didn't make him as much of an asshole. Trust me. Talk to any X-Men fan about how Cyclops' story has unfolded in the comics, especially with respect to his relationship with Jean Grey, Madeline Pryor, and everyone else, every other woman he's been involved with. Yeah, that's going to get heated, but I think this show did a great job in essentially preventing some of those complications. Like, he did not know that the woman he was with and was having a child with was a clone. He didn't know that until after their kid was born, and until after the real Jean Grey showed up randomly, not knowing where she was, and it was a really it put him in a hell of a position, one that it's easy to sympathize with, but it also, you can sense that that situation kind of you could see the seeds that it was starting to radicalize him a little, because the Cyclops we saw in the first episode, who was so capable and together, was rattled. Then other characters experienced things. Storm definitely felt that too after this episode 2, when she lost her powers. Rogue definitely went through quite a bit. Yeah, I could make an entire video about what Rogue endured, and how I know I hate love triangles, but when they brought in Rogue's history with Magneto, which was not referenced in the original series, but it is an important part of the comics. I'm surprised they brought that in, but at the same time, I think it was a good plot for Rogue to follow, because for so much of her history, Rogue has sort of, even in the old show, whenever she finds someone that she can actually touch, that definitely affects her. And Magneto, because of his powers, he can touch her, and that is something that affects her. That's it's hard for her to kind of turn that away, because she can't have that with Gambit, even though she clearly cares for him. And what happened with Gambit, that definitely was quite possibly the biggest moment of this season. There's a very, I remember all the discussions that happened when Remember It, episode 5 dropped. That got a lot of people worked up, and believe me, there were a lot of new Gambit fans made that day, and there were a lot of hearts broken that day. And the two voice actors, AJ Lacasio and the great Lenore Zahn, who came back to voice Rogue, they put their all into this. And if they don't get any awards, then someone needs to get fired. But yeah, that moment, that really did sort of that was the biggest turning point of the season. It was the moment where kind of all these other miniature melodramas kind of fell to the wayside, because it reminded everyone, this is big. We kind of have to come together now, and they definitely did. After what happened on Genosha, which was a perfect adaptation of E is for Extinction, which is the one of the most pivotal moments in the X-Men comics. That was an incredible turning point that I think brought out the best in every character. It got it brought out all the right emotions. It brought out heartbreak. It brought out anger, and I think more than anything else, it created this big public atrocity, this horrible tragedy that every mutant has endured, and one that every mutant throughout the world felt. Like they finally have, this country of theirs. They finally have, a place they can, be themselves. And that's a plot from the comics that's happened before. And in the old show, Genosha was a slave island for that where mutants were enslaved. And Asteroid M, which comes into the picture later on, that was their first attempt at a haven, but that got screwed up, but through no fault of their own. What happened here on Genosha was truly an atrocity. It was something that I don't think could never, ever have been done back in the 90s, because it was just so, the imagery and the parallels of, an entire nation, an entire, group of minorities being slaughtered was just, it was horrific. And when eventually we did find out who was behind it. Now, unlike the comics, there was Cassandra Nova did not show up in this series, but we know she's coming into Deadpool and Wolverine. But this is kind of that what happened on Genosha was a perfect testament to what Bastion was capable of. I really think compared to the comics, Bastion was already bad enough in the comics. He played a part in some really major events, but making him responsible for E is for Extinction, making him sort of the big brain behind the operation, someone who was working with Sinister, someone who was putting together this new fighting force to not only wipe out mutants but essentially evolve the human race. His mantra, tolerance is extinction. He kind of takes that to a huge extreme. He's not just going to, he doesn't just want to take down the X-Men. He wants to wipe every mutant on the planet off, and he wants every human being to evolve. But there's kind of a subtext, what about the humans who don't want to evolve? He seems to be somewhat liberal when it comes to whether or not they have a choice, which speaks a lot to, how just cold and unfeeling Bastion is. And and also the voice actor for Bastion, he definitely he kind of reminded me a bit of a character like Albert Wesker from Resident Evil. He was very his presence was menacing. His abilities were menacing, and especially in the last two episodes, we saw what happens with Bastion when he kind of goes full power, and he is a machine, but what's important is he also was still a man. They did not they more so than the comics. The comics were a lot more cosmic and a lot more out there with respect to Bastion, but this show really humanized him. That's an important distinction with the threat the X-Men faced over the course. It wasn't other mutants who were really as much a threat as it was humans. If you watch the old show, the old '90s show, there was always somewhat of a reluctance to make the X-Men's enemies other humans. Of course, you had people like the Friends of Humanity, but even then, that was kind of watered down. Bastion was much more extreme. He didn't just hate mutants; he literally wanted to slaughter them, and he did on Genosha. And finding him, learning about his plot, and having to facing him down when he is preparing to unleash his armies over the entire world. Which, by the way, that it led to some really important cameos from other Marvel characters that is going to get a lot of people clamoring for more for more crossover stories, or maybe even another revival. Trust me, Spider-Man fans are going to be clamoring for a for like a '90s Spider-Man revival. There was even in the finale, there was a very overt reference to the events of the original Spider-Man series. And actually, also before I started recording this, the showrunner of the series, Bo DeMaio, he flat out confirmed that that I won't say exactly what happened in the show because I don't want to spoil everything, but he said that this takes place after the finale of the '90s Spider-Man cartoon, which ended on such a horrifyingly frustrating cliffhanger that I'm still not over. I don't think I'm ever going to be, and trust me, other Spider-Man fans feel the same way. But I think even if Spider-Man doesn't really say anything in this show, other than just a cameo, his presence definitely helped, along with the other Avengers, helps this show feel like it's part of a larger Marvel universe. It's not the same as the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but it still feels like that same interconnected Marvel universe from the '90s that we know and love. It definitely did a lot of world building. Again, this was just a 10-episode season. To do that much in just 10 episodes, it's amazing to think that it accomplished that. But if this show had a strength, I think all those strengths were best manifested in the last 3 episodes, Tolerance is Extinction, because this wasn't just like taking down Master Mold. This wasn't just a matter of taking down Bastion's evil plot. What Magneto went through in these last 3 episodes, and kind of the arc he went through from the beginning, he also had quite possibly one of the best plots of this entire series. You get the sense when it starts, he's giving Charles Xavier's dream a chance. We find out Xavier left him the mansion in his will, and he left him in charge of the X-Men in his will. We get the sense he does give it a try. In episode 2, he famously, gave that he made it clear to the United Nations, look, don't make me let you down. And they did let him down. That was tragic because you get the sense that he didn't want to be proven right. He didn't want to be that was a popular hashtag for a while. Magneto was right, but after what happened on Genosha and after his reaction to it, Magneto is one of those characters you can't. It's hard to call him a villain when so many times his animosity towards humanity is vindicated. And that moment, like on Genosha, that moment when he was comforting Leech, that kid, and that was just heartbreaking. And you could not, even though he went to extremes, even though he essentially was willing to let the entire world die and everyone on it. It's hard to blame him. I mean, he already survived one horrific atrocity as a child. Now he has to endure another on Genosha. That's it's 2 atrocities, way too many. And when he eventually has to confront the X-Men, and of course they actually, I still can't believe that they went so far as to have Magneto do what he did in ripping the adamantium out of Wolverine's body. That was a moment from the comics that still goes down as one of the most brutal moments in X-Men history, if not Marvel history, because even by the standards of the time, that was pretty extreme. But at the same time, it reflects how far Magneto is willing to go and what he's willing to do to get his point across. But at the same time, one thing that I'm really glad this show did, especially these last 2 episodes, I was kind of worried that Xavier was going to start crossing way too many lines and he was going to kind of take a too dark a turn, because It was after in the comics, it was that moment when he ripped the adamantium out of Wolverine that triggered Xavier to start that kind of create that's led to the Onslaught plot, which really was the first of many, many steps that had Charles Xavier take a very, very dark turn. And while they still could do that Onslaught plot in the next season, I still they did not. It was not a matter of Xavier. You didn't see him start to really go dark. You actually did try to still reach out to his friend, to the mind of his friend. We saw, the connection these two people have. You saw him really try to appeal to not Magneto, but more the man the friend he always cared for. He never called him. He kept calling him Magnus, and I think that's an important distinction. He kept trying to say, okay, look, you've experienced all this stuff, but all these tragedies, all these atrocities, but fighting one atrocity with another, that's not a solution. This is, you're basically using Bastion's tactics. Bastion is his idea of solving the problem is to wipe out the problem. That's not a viable solution. And it was a painful exchange, but one in which I'm really glad that Xavier did not just completely go off the deep end as he did in the comics. Because again, the Charles Xavier that's been in the comics for the past 20 years has been a shady character on a good day and an outright asshole at worst. And in the more recent comics, trust me, he's kind of lost all credibility. But in this show, he is still the dreamer. He is still the man who's trying to teach others that there's a better way than committing than atrocities. And I feel like he did help. He really made his point well. He had a good. In the fact that he was able to come back from this after he had a nice chance to live a nice life with Lilandra with the Shi'ar, who that's another subplot that's going to be interesting to pick up. But he still came back to help his X-Men. He still came back to help them save the day, and he still values his dream, and he's as willing to fight for it as ever. And the other X-Men rallied around that in a way that was just perfect. And trust me, there were so many great moments, but at the same time, if this show has a flaw, it doesn't have many. It's just that it was just too short. I would have loved to have even just a few more episodes. I would have loved to see see Madeline Pryor get to do more, because after after what happened in episode 3, she did get a chance to kind of go off and on her own, and she got a chance to play a part in Genosha, which I would have liked to see her establish herself more. I don't know, maybe a part of her will come back, but even though it was kind of confirmed she was dead. But I would have liked to see more of that. I would have liked to see more moments with Cable and Cyclops and Jean. They had some really good family moments, especially in episode 8. That family dynamic with Cyclops, Jean, and Cable, that was fun to watch. It did kind of help balance out the tragedy of what happened to them when with Madeline. And they definitely went even more so than I think any other challenge they faced in the original series. Cyclops and Jean Grey's marriage and their relationship and their romance, they definitely faced quite a bit. And the fact that it didn't get as bleak as the comics did. Like the comics were were a lot more destructive in the melodrama between them, but this show was a lot more measured. Yeah, it had them deal with some difficult emotions, but it also had them realize, hey, they are a family, and when they learn Cable is their son, they really lean into that role. And the last episode actually, I will gladly spoil this part. It rips another important it takes from another important stories from the comics, the Adventures of Cyclops and Phoenix. That was in the comics when they traveled to the future to raise their then infant son Nathan. So they're going to get a chance to be the parents they never got to be, which is perfect. That was definitely one of my personal favorite stories that came out of the '90s. But they end up where they end up is different from the rest of the team. The rest of the team, they're still scattered, and I'll spoil this too. They save the day, but while they're missing in the present, they find themselves in the past, and they encounter a younger version of Apocalypse, who he's already set up for season 2. We knew Apocalypse was coming back. In fact, back in season 5 of the original series, it was clear that Apocalypse, was not gone. He was going to come back at some point. We just didn't know how. Well, now it looks like we're going to figure out how. And we could be setting up for an age of Apocalypse. We could be setting up for Onslaught somehow. There's so much to look forward to. And I would also love it if, maybe the Avengers will get more involved, because they, the last few episodes, we saw Iron Man, we saw Captain America, we even saw, of course, we saw Spider-Man, Daredevil. We didn't see there was also a Hulk reference in episode 9. That I guess that means the Hulk is part of this world. So I would love to see a bit like an Avengers X-Men team, but maybe we'll get a future Avengers versus X-Men plot depending on how many seasons this show goes. We know season 2 is coming. That is as confirmed as can be. But as for anything beyond that, I think season 3 is probably happening, but who knows? There's a lot to look forward to. This show set up many plots. It set up plenty of melodrama. We got to see Jubilee grow up. She actually was a lot more capable in this series. She was always sort of more of a bratty kid in the original show, but by the end of this first season, she really showed what she can do. She really showed that she can hold her own. And she could even, mentor others. She had got herself a love interest in Sunspot, which they had their ups and downs. But honestly, I think they were a good example of young teen love. But if the other thing this show did that I'm honestly relieved is they did not let Wolverine take over the show. And as much as I love Cal Dodd, as much as I love that his gruff old voice. He did not play a huge role in a lot of stories. Yeah, he did. He was on the front lines of a lot of battles. He did have his own gruff remarks, but he did not outshine or overshadow anyone. He was kind of allowed to sort of be a supporting character throughout the season. I think that's important. I think Wolverine was sort of too. He sort of overtook the Fox X-Men movies to a point where everyone around them suffered. But I think he had a good dynamic with everyone in this series as more of a supporting character. He had a great little dynamic with Morph, who was probably the best comic relief for the show. I wish he had gotten a chance to do more, but he was a fun character from the very beginning. And even in the final episode when he got to troll Sinister, that was very, very satisfying to see. So there's every character kind of had a chance to shine. Storm really shined, Forge shined. Bishop had his moments, he didn't get many. But even Val Cooper, one of the who was voiced by Jean Grey's original actress Catherine Disher. She actually was an interesting went through an interesting arc, and I hope we get to see more of her. She is alive at the end of the final episode, so I really hope we see more of her. And there was also other familiar names like Graydon Creed were name dropped, but and also Emma Frost did show up very, very briefly with the rest of the Hellfire Club, and she did she was one of the survivors of Genosha, so we don't know what's going to happen with her, but. I suspect she's going to have a role in season 2. There was also a few other mutants that were, Colossus was referenced. Even Kitty Pryde was referenced in the end, although very, very briefly. So maybe we'll see more of that. But I don't want to start speculating and theorizing too much on season 2 because I could, I want to save that for another video. But there's so much more I can say about X-Men 97. It is quite possibly the best thing Marvel has done in the past 20 years. It shows, it doesn't just show, how good the X-Men can be. It shows how great animation can be. I mean, at a time, we have shows like Invincible, Castlevania, and Arcane. This show definitely deserves to be in that tier. Yeah, 10 episodes is not enough, but it has really shown, it's given us the best the X-Men can have to offer. It's given us everything we could have hoped for in a revival. It honors what came before it, and it builds for the future. And I couldn't be, as a lifelong X-Men fan, I could not be happier with how it has played out. And it's going to be a long wait for the next season. Now, as far as rumors go in terms of when it's coming out, according to some of the usual sources, it should come out sometime in winter 2025. I don't know if that means it's going to be in January 2025 or December 2025. That's both is feels like it's a long, long way off, and I do not. And it's going to be a long wait. But it took a long time for the X-Men to return to animation, but the wait was so worth it. So yeah, even if you're a lapsed X-Men fan, even if you're just a Marvel fan even if you don't know anything about the X-Men, this show is a perfect jumping on point. It gives you all the characters you need to know. It shows you, it captures all the right themes associated with X-Men. It just does everything so right, and I couldn't be happier with this first season. So I'll leave it at that. There's a lot more I can say. I'll save that for some other videos or live chats. But yeah, X-Men 97 is a winner. It is a truly uncanny hit, if that's not too fitting a word. So yeah, thank you all very much for joining me. Thank you very much for joining me in my world. And this has been another edition of Jack Quick Reacts. And until next time, take care and stay safe, everyone.